Hello, everyone. So before we even get into this chat, I just want to do something I've never, ever done before, but I know is critically important. This episode is actually some pretty heavy content. Now, we've stood in the discomfort together before. That's part of what we do here at the Tell Me More podcast. But I also recognize that we each carry different levels of trauma, of grief, and experiences. And for that reason, I'm going to issue the first trigger warning that we've ever had here on the show. And that's because our conversation here today is going to consist of infant loss, child loss, as well as gun violence. And if this is something that you have experienced, that you have been close to, or that may trigger some sensitivities within you, I fully understand that you may need to pause during this episode, stop this episode, or decide to skip it altogether. And I understand that completely, but I also want to let you know that the episode will begin after this introduction. So listen to the intro, and if it is something that you believe could change your life, as I do, then I think you should stay tuned. Friends, today's guest is someone whose story and strength has stopped me in my tracks more than once. Nelba Márquez-Greene is not only a fierce advocate and licensed marriage and family therapist, but she's also a mother, a movement builder, and a woman who knows unimaginable loss. And she still dares to live out loud. Nelba is the founder of the Anna Grace Project, created in honor of her daughter, Anna Grace, who was one of the 26 precious lives taken at Sandy Hook Elementary in 2012. Since then, she's turned heartbreak into hope, leading powerful conversations about trauma, healing, and what it means to build communities that truly love harder. She speaks truth in rooms that don't always want to hear it. She brings grace where others bring judgment. And she's here with us today, not just to reflect, but to reclaim space, to reimagine what healing looks like, and to remind us all that grief and joy can and do coexist. I am so honored to welcome to the show, Nelba Márquez-Greene. Nelba, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for having me.
So listen, we're going to have a sis moment. Just going to kick it off with the sis moment, because I know that this is and can be heavy subject matter. Almost every time someone gets you in the room, they want it to be a sob story, right?
Correct.
So what people don't know is you are truly the sis, right? You were the one at the vineyard on the weekend with a glass of wine, right? Dancing to herself out of life. You can be, right?
Yes.
You know, have a good time. You are funny. You are snarky. You have all of the things. And I love that about you. I love that about you. You are such walking joy. Now, I also have to say, there's a reason why I said you bring grace without judgment. And it's because, girl, the first time we met, you should have cussed me out. People would not believe that story, but it is the truth. I first want to apologize to you in person, right? Because I know that we've had conversations over the past couple of weeks, via email going back and forth, but I am so sorry for my tweet that I put out on Threads. I don't know if they're called tweets anymore, but on Threads, I made a comment, y'all, where I, in the wake of the Annunciation.
It was Annunciation.
It was Annunciation.
Yep.
It's sad that I'm not sure which one.
Right.
That's telling in and of itself.
Right.
But in the Annunciation school shooting, as a longtime advocate, for gun control, just another thing that I was just royally pissed about. I was pissed. And I made a post that eventually went viral, unintentionally. I didn't know it was going to go viral,
Right.
but I was out of my rage. I said, I'm going to paraphrase myself because I don't remember the exact words, but I said, I knew that we were cooked. I knew that no one cared anymore when they killed a classroom full of white children outside of Connecticut. That's when I knew it didn't matter. Right. And that was awful. It was not true. It was misinformation. And I was lazy in my rage and not making sure that that answer was accurate. And not only am I fully embarrassed and disappointed in myself as someone who is blessed to have a microphone, but, it made its way to you, the daughter of a brown, beautiful baby, that also was a victim on that day. And that erasure of Anna Grace is something that I truly regret. And I am sorry for that.
I told you from day one, I accept your apology. And I also want to tell you that interaction wasn't the first time we met. I actually followed you on Twitter. I had followed you on Twitter. So I knew immediately when I saw the posts that you just didn't know.
Yeah, you're too
And
kind. You're
I
too
wanted
kind.
to connect in some way only so that you knew Anna lived, right? It wasn't to shame you, because what I saw when I read your post was actually the rage, the concern, the care. And I remembered that you had children.
Yes.
And I thought, oh, okay, she's responding to this. She just doesn't know Anna was a Black and Puerto Rican girl who lived and also died. So how do I tell her? What I did not understand was how that was going to make other people feel. So if I could do something different, it would be to respond to you in private, because that activated other people to not know. I knew your heart, but I'm not sure that other people did.
Sure.
So I would have done. So I apologize to you for that. I should have responded to you in private and trusted that the woman I knew over Twitter and had read about over the years and who had shared posts about her family and her journey would have responded to me. And it was just like you had that immediate reaction, I had one too. Because Anna often gets not told. And there were other children who were also, children of color. And it's just so hard to live a collective tragedy, but have an individual story.
Of course. I mean, you're very generous in giving me that, but I made my mistake publicly. So I got chewed out publicly, and that is very Puerto Rican mama of you.
And I heard the feedback also. I saw, actually not heard feedback. I saw, people are weaponizing this. And let's talk about how people weaponize mistakes against Black women.
Listen.
I'm also woman enough to understand that I also could have been more careful, because that's not what I wanted.
Of course
not. So then people weaponized a mistake against you. So then when I got your email, I thought, this is a chance. Let me tell her my heart. And it was just, and I wonder if we would ever meet in mind, but I never imagined this.
Of course.
So thank you for having me as a podcast guest.
Well, I'm letting you know right now that, we're both God girls, and he uses everything for good. Every single thing is intentional.
And that's how I knew I had to get on a plane. So I have intense fear flying.
I didn't know that.
So I am just all over the place, but I'm like, okay, I have to go. And my husband even said, you can't do this online. You can't do this with all the technology.
I had to meet you. Yes.
And I said, no, I actually have to get on a plane. I met your assistant, Mary.
She's wonderful.
She made me feel, and I'm like, so not only is she wonderful, but she has a wonderful team.
Oh, you're so kind. You are so kind.
It just worked.
No, we are so blessed. I mean, not only are you deeply deserving, but, I'm just so, so grateful. So thank you, thank you, thank you. And I have to ask you, you are so generous with your story. I mean, a lot, the things that you've experienced are things that people have nightmares about,
Right.
And I honestly can say, I do not know if I have the wherewithal and strength to still be having this conversation and leading, a foundation, having activations and speaking about this story and making sure that Anna's voice lives on for as many years as she should have had, and that is a level of bravery and courageousness that not only do I admire, but I'm also a little bit, in awe of, and so I have to ask you if there was anything that people needed to know about your lived experience, this one that many of us hope we never have, but is an increasing reality every single day here in America. What would that be?
So I have an answer to that in two parts. And the first one is that this type of grief, and I don't mean to speak for all people, I will only speak for myself, actually doesn't ever go away. The kind of grief that happens after an injustice is different than other kinds of grief. So when you sit at the intersection of grief, trauma, and injustice, you actually can't use traditional grief models so that people get to acceptance or whatever concept they have in their head. That just doesn't work. So let's just start there. And the second one I would say is that the rhythm of activism that was expected of us and the rhythm of my survival were just two different rhythms. And I had to pick one to survive. And I did. I chose my survival.
Wow. So, I mean, I can honestly say just these concepts, because we do kind of lump grief in as if it's a singular word with a unilateral definition, right?
No.
It's grief is grief, right?
Right.
If you're sad about your dog, if you're sad about your job, if you're sad about your divorce, it's all the same. And I'm grateful also because this is part of your professional expertise, so you're lending us even more behind it, even though your nuances sadly derive from this experience. So, can you tell us more? Tell me more about what you mean by that. You're right. People expected you to do something, which is kind of crazy, right? I mean, because as a mom, you should lay out. You should just lay out. If you were right now just laying in some grass, touching it 24/7, I would get it. You know what I mean?
Right. But that's not what happens to mothers who have lost.
Absolutely.
Think about what we do to families who have been impacted by gun violence. We want to hear their story. We want them to show up. First question we ask is, do you forgive the shooter? At least that's how it was 13 years ago. We'll put a microphone in your face, and the first question is, do you forgive the shooter? So there are a list of expectations.
Wow.
I remember hearing a story from Trayvon's mom, Sabrina, and she said, all I wanted to do was lay down. But there were no charges in that case in the beginning. There was no investigation. And finally, her family said, we get it. We know you want to lay down, but if you don't come out here and get in front of this microphone, we're not going to get any attention and we'll never get justice for your son. So you have to get out of bed. And that is another injustice that families like mine get. We are not allowed to rest. We are not allowed to desire rest. You have to start a foundation. You have to come up with a solution. You have to build a 501c3. You have to find a way. And here's the truth. It sets up this dichotomous system where I lost a child in Sandy Hook. So that automatically gives me a certain kind of exposure and privilege that moms who in the same state lose their children on a street corner will not get. And what do you think it makes them feel like?
The fact that you're using the word privilege in relation to that is infuriating and also makes me nauseous. Like, it just doesn't seem.
But let's tell the truth.
Right.
Let's not waste the time on your podcast.
Right.
By not telling the truth. It is a privilege. And if I don't admit it, what does it make that mom feel like who lost her child on a street corner, who people saw it on the news and went, wrong place, wrong time. When she wants to start it with 501c3 and she sees me and she's feeling like, why couldn't I get that? And I have to sit down with her and say a whole lot of anti-Blackness, a whole lot of privilege, and a whole lot of other things. It's really important that as Anna and Isaiah's mom and dad, we stand in the gap and tell our own unique story and how we can see things from multiple sides.
So let's talk about the ways that you're doing this, because there are a lot of people who Sandy Hook got a different type of attention, as you know.
Absolutely.
Different type of attention. I'm sure you can tell us more about why that is, right? But the outcome also is Sandy Hook is a conversation that didn't seem to fade in the same way that, Uvalde has even faded a little bit, especially to those who aren't involved in the activism. Correct. And prefer to see these things these unpleasantries, which is how people treat it, just disappear. And also how, things that shouldn't be normal become normalized. So with the awareness that Sandy Hook has this elevation, that it has this visibility, we've also seen it politicized. We've seen it diminished. We've seen it attached to other different projects and foundations. And I know that a lot of the parents that are actively involved, because there are 26 families
Correct.
that can speak to this experience different from anyone else. Talk to me about that, Nelba.
And even different from one another. Being a part of collective events and having an individual identity is really difficult. And at the same time, how could we not? I'm a 50-year-old Puerto Rican woman. My husband is a 50-year-old Black man with a doctoral degree who teaches music and is a jazz musician. We were both, before tragedy, attached to communities.
That's right.
That loved us, that knew us. It was a really, and still is to this day, a wild reality to, on the one hand, have thousands of people think you are not a real person. And I'm talking about conspiracy theorists right now. Yet at the same time, live in a community that has known you since you were a child, where we went to high school, where we went to middle school. My husband and I went to high school together. We are high school sweethearts.
Oh my gosh.
And the high school where we went, the Greater Hartford Academy of the Arts, that's what it was called then.
Shout out.
Named a school after, we didn't have millions of dollars to build our own school, but they named an elementary school feeder the Anna Grace Academy of the Arts, because that's the power of community.
They're
so
your
much.
people. They're your people.
Yes.
Yes. It's a real people.
The jazz community, the mental health community, the education community, the church community.
To have all of that and know that you're surrounded and there's a very deep realness. You exist so heavily there.
I'm a person.
You're a whole you are a person. Anna Grace is a person. Your
My
family.
husband is a person.
And you have other
My
children
son
too.
is a person.
Yes. And you have other children.
I have a son who, I love you, Isaiah. Your mom loves you. I don't know where I'm supposed to look.
Yeah,
who is 21 and a junior. And we were very protective of him, just as we were like, no, we want to survive. We also wanted to make sure Isaiah survived. So we said to him, this is something you have to live with, but how you carry it is your choice.
Oh, generous. So knowing that your existence was very much a reality, obviously, because you are here and these events are real, to also then allow yourself to have a microphone to enter spaces where people are going to not just challenge and step all over your existence and your reality and the truth. We talk about the full armor of God, right? How do you suit up for that? And why do you? Because as a mom and as a fellow woman and as a Black woman, and as a woman of color, like, I ain't got it sometimes. You know what I mean? Like to enter spaces where I know I'm going to be challenged just on my right to exist when I'm coming in with so much trauma. Like, how dare you? You are so grace-filled when you do it. How do you do this?
Sometimes.
Okay, so
let's do sometimes.
Yes.
Sometimes,
we all have both sides,
I could
right?
always do
That's
better.
Right.
God is a God of order, and also the word wisdom appears in the Bible a lot, right? And I think he gives us a spirit of wisdom and a spirit of discernment to be able to assess. And I have been wrong, yes, but we have also made choices based on that wisdom and discernment to allow us to walk in those spaces which would be safer for us. So what did that mean? Well, for us, it meant carrying on Anna's legacy in our way. So yes, we started a foundation, and we decide then what we do in her name, as opposed to attaching ourselves to something where we would have less control. Where we speak, where we sit, all of those are who we let in, right? There are porch friends, there are male friends,
yes, girl.
Correspondence friends,
yes,
and then there
girl.
are inside the house friends.
Yes, girl.
Those are all decisions. So having boundaries, I love Nedra Tawwab's
love her
book on
boundaries, find peace.
Yes, and the second one for family that she wrote, it really took our journey to a different level. Making decisions, feeling empowered, knowing we had choice, and we didn't have to follow the rhythm of everybody else's activism, which I don't judge.
Yes,
it wasn't right for us.
That's right. Did you have the sense of self before this event, or do you feel like you became more of this?
There was probably some that existed before, but certainly so our kids were prayed for. We knew we were going to have a boy, and I married my high school sweetheart. We went to school, we started our careers, and then we decided to have children. These things were planned. We saw, right, a boy, a girl, their names. We knew their names. Like God had revealed that to us. I don't know why he didn't reveal this. That the biggest challenge of our lives would be to lose her. And we had 2 kids in the building. I just want to be clear. We didn't know if we would get either of them back. We are grateful to have Isaiah and live every day in that gratitude. But so there are days that I question, why?
What do we need to know about Anna? What do we need to know about Anna Grace? Tell me everything about it.
She was so proud of herself. We moved to Canada for a time.
What?
We moved to Winnipeg for a time. And my biggest concern would be how they would feel about themselves in a community. Winnipeg,
That didn't
Manitoba.
look like them, maybe? That maybe not look like them so much?
Wouldn't have a ton of Black people,
Yeah,
right?
of course.
Wouldn't have a ton of Puerto Ricans. But first of all, let me tell you about Winnipeg. It was cold.
Yes, girl.
But the
I was like, wait a minute now.
warm. But the people are so warm. We were immediately embraced, immediately accepted by the university community where my husband was teaching, the church and school communities where he found. They loved us and we loved them. And she would tell the kids, I'm African American, Puerto Rican, and Canadian now.
And Canadian,
right?
she's
and
so
Canadian.
cute. I can't.
She was able to give love and receive it.
Oh.
And when she was killed and we were here, the province of Manitoba, the city of Winnipeg, lowered their flags at half-mast.
Amen.
They felt she was hers. And they sent a private plane with citizens to her funeral. That is Winnipeg.
That's love. That's loving hard.
That is loving hard. There were 5, you're a mother, so I'm going to share this story, which I don't share very often. After President Obama came to Sandy Hook on the Sunday after the shooting, I got on the phone with Karen Schrader, worship leader at our church in Canada. And Karen asked, what do you need? Because she knew we had just moved to Sandy Hook. We didn't have a church. We didn't have, this was a new community for us. It was an hour from our old stomping grounds. And she said, what do you need? And I said, I have just finished asking my son what he needs to feel better. And he said his friends. And he named kids in Winnipeg. We can't pay for this funeral. How were we supposed to bring these kids here? And who would want to bring their children here? And the next day I got a phone call. The mothers of those 5 children and their fathers were getting on planes to come to Connecticut so that they could be with Isaiah. And that's how our lives have been since that day. We do experience a lot of crazy, but we experience a lot of community that loves hard.
I'm encouraged by humanity in hearing that we have not forgotten how to wrap the people who deserve the most in the love that is required. I also, from the outside, have seen what you've also experienced. Have you had to put a block around that, or are you just choosing to lean into the love?
If I focused entirely on the ways survivors are failed,
yes,
I would not be here. So I choose to, it's not ignore, but it's amplify the examples of good. Everyone listening to your podcast, there is probably a victim of gun violence, a family impacted by gun violence within a 10-mile radius of their home, whether that be suicide, which is how most victims are impacted, whether it be domestic violence or community violence. So start there. It's great that you want to send money to all of these places where there are mass shootings. Those communities do need your help, but so does yours. So does your local chapter of whatever activism group is in your neighborhood. Start there.
Now, people draw distinctions within gun violence, right?
Yes,
There's
they do.
also a privilege that's assigned to people that want to label someone as not deserving of it versus someone else. Can you talk to me about that?
Well, that is a privilege not just of gun violence or a myth that exists not just in gun violence. That's a myth that exists in the church. I am convinced that one of the reasons we are so reluctant to help people is this mythology that exists in our church spaces, that if we did things the right way, that if we prayed enough, that if we gave enough, we can then avoid. It is another evil manifestation of prosperity gospel.
Ooh.
We can avoid illness, we can avoid tragedy, and we are consistently creating music and books and culture within the church that teaches people this. And therefore, when they are standing in a firehouse and the governor of their state says, if you have not received your child, there are no more survivors. You will not be able to stand. As a believer, you will not be able to stand, because we need to be reminding people that that is not the way God works. That is not the way mercy works. That is not the way love works. And yeah.
There's no good enough that makes us exempt from having to sometimes confront the ills of this world.
And there is no evil enough.
That's right.
That would make you meriting
or deserving of the worst
gun
of the world.
violence.
Yes.
As much as I disagree, and this might be controversial, with every single one of Charlie Kirk's stances, and I do not agree at all that this person showed Christian love. The idea that we are murdering people and cheering, I could never stand for that.
That's right.
And I don't care who it is. I didn't like it when we said it about, there have been many cases in the public eye. As a matter of fact, I remember one time posting that people should give to Circle of Mothers. Again, one of Sabrina Trayvon's mom's initiatives. And people were just floored. And I'm like, why are you floored? And it's because of what you said. We assign mercy and goodness and to some cases and not others. And have you ever heard a mom who lost a child to gun violence cry?
I've witnessed videos, and I'm being completely honest with you here. I would mute, because the wail of that type of loss is not something I think my body could bear.
So that wail is what I'm going to say right now. It is being done by mothers in the Congo, in the Sudan, in Gaza, in Israel, while they were waiting for their children to come back, in Sandy Hook, in Compton, in Hartford. And that is the sound that motivates me to get up in the morning. That I just don't think any mom should have to do that sound, as someone who has done that sound and broken the capillaries of my own eyes making it. Does that make sense?
I wish it didn't. Thank you for that. Thank you for sharing that. And I think a lot of mothers, especially here, that resonates. It resonates. So we are over a decade past the event, although I know for you it's as fresh as every morning. And but knowing that, we're still very much confronting it, almost to the point where I think there is a frustration amongst, mothers, at the normalization of what should never be normal. And I wanted to ask you, when do you think things changed, or do you think they have? Do you think we're looking at things the same? Because from my perspective, it feels like nothing has changed. It feels like Sandy Hook could have been yesterday or tomorrow, because it just feels like nothing has changed in perspective to it in terms of action outside of we know of more scenarios, or we have now met Nelba, or we have a different story or voice or more foundations, but it just doesn't feel like anything's changed. Whereas some people are like, no, we've made meaningful progress. We're taking steps in the right direction, or there's new conversations. I mean, what's your take on it? When do you think it got to a fever point where something actually matters? What is it going to take?
I have a few different answers to that question. And the first is, I think declaring gun violence a public health issue, Vivek Murthy did that under the last administration, under the Biden administration, was a huge step forward. I think the Bipartisan Safer Communities Act was a huge step forward. Again, an initiative under President Biden. Establishing the White House Office of Gun Violence Prevention, run by amazing people. Again, something else that President Biden and Vice President Kamala Harris incredibly committed to. Why then, if we know that voters are overwhelmingly supportive of gun violence prevention initiatives, do we then not vote for the candidate that we know is going to preserve that? I think this is my first time in a while being able to share. I think the root of it is anti-Blackness. I think the root of it is the same root as to why we're about to kick a bunch of people off SNAP, why we laid off a bunch of federal workers, why we are making the targeted attacks that we are against certain groups of people. It starts with change is going to require internal work. It is not going to happen as a reflexive thing after a tragedy. It is going to require people looking at themselves in the mirror and saying, you know what, I am a little bit racist. And I allowed the racism in my heart to keep me from voting for the woman that would have preserved the office of White House gun violence prevention. Because as much as I'm sad about those Sandy Hook families, I carry even more fear that my Mexican neighbor is going to take some job or something like that. And we need to have an honest conversation, because that's the thing that gets in the way of everything.
Mm-hmm.
And everybody wants to play footsie with the truth. And we got to stop playing footsie with the truth, or we are going to continue on this spiral of demise. We really want hungry kids at school. We know hungry kids can't learn.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
How are we going to do this?
Mm-hmm. No, I'm happy to hear your perspective on it, because I think I've done episodes on single issue voters prior to the election. And I feel like that kind of, there's an overlap there where people are so quick to say that there is one issue that mattered most to them. And, and again, I always try to speak to those people too, or to the people who didn't vote at all, because they just felt pulled in directions or whatever their reasons were. But single issue voters are like, I care about this one thing and it supersedes everything else. And I think that what we're all learning is, our world is an ecosystem. Not one thing cannot stand amongst the others, because if that one thing doesn't go the way you wanted it to and you voted for just that one thing, now look at everything else, the consequence of it all. And I did my part. I voted the way I felt would, be important and would make a difference and would preserve things. I've, had a conversation actually with, someone yesterday, maybe the day before. And she mentioned to me she was a Trump voter, and she lived in a very red pocket, of a fairly blue state, and she mentioned that she voted for Trump and everyone around her voted for Trump. And she grew up with a very conservative background due to her religion and her faith. And it was fairly single issue, maybe like 2 or 3 high inflection points for her. But she also shared that in her community, the tone was changing as people were seeing things executed, that they felt lied to, that they felt confused, that they felt like they, each of them had their single issues and they weren't happening the way they thought they would. And, on some level, this is kind of what I want to bring back to you. On some level, I think it's encouraging to hear people, not in an I told you so way, but to know that people still have the ability to use critical thinking and deductive reasoning to recognize that what they're seeing happen now is not in alignment with what was promised or said. Although, Harris voters will say that's exactly. I was going to say, some of us know, we know exactly what was said.
I'm going to challenge
that's
that
the best
a little
thing
bit.
I can say,
I'm going to check, because was anybody listening?
Right.
I'm sorry, did you
Project
not hear
2025,
him say?
I know, girl.
Did you not hear him say, I can shoot someone in the middle of
the
Fifth
street
Avenue?
And they would do nothing to me.
Was an entire page in an outlet dedicated to jailing 5 innocent Black and brown boys.
Yes.
Not enough to disqualify a person,
mocking the
it was
disabled,
enough for me.
Talking about grabbing women by their pussies, like they're definitely, when I say that, again, I absolutely knew to believe what I saw. I also will hold space for the fact that some people may not have picked that up, right? Some people go to magic shows and they don't know how the trick happened, right?
I need, then here's what I need. I need people to do more internal work.
More internal work. So that was going to be my question to you.
I need people
What would we say to those people? Because we are here now, right? We are here now. And I vacillate between we are fucked, we are cooked, right? And the other side of it is, oh, I serve a good God. Everything there is a plan.
Both can coexist.
So walk me through the coexisting part, that grief and joy, because you do it so well.
Both
what
can
do we
coexist. I first want to elevate that being betrayed and lied to, or feeling that some other group is holding you back is not an excuse to make things worse for other people. Black women voted 92%, and they too have been betrayed, belittled, attacked. So you can actually be attacked, be treated poorly, and make good decisions. This idea, a white young man killed my daughter. I don't go, do you know what would have happened to my son if my husband and I decided in that moment, you know what, we're going to teach him to hate everyone who hurt his sister. He wouldn't be able to have the life he has now, a life of love and connectedness, a life that is diverse and robust. And he went to private school, to play hockey. He wouldn't have been able to do any of those things.
You flew in a plane full of white Canadians to come play with him as
they
comfort.
Flew in. I just told the woman, I couldn't do anything. I couldn't even. And my kids had these groups of diverse, good people around them all the time and still do. So folks have to ask themselves why they were so bitter that a Black woman was running, that they wouldn't vote for her, even if they knew it would hurt vulnerable people and possibly even themselves. I want to have that conversation. I was stopped by a woman at a winery, a Latina woman, and I'd had a flight already, which was probably a mistake.
Well-deserved.
I had a well-deserved flight.
Listen, we love a loose Nelba, okay? We like a little spicy Nelba, okay?
I had a well-deserved flight with my husband at the winery after church, and we were leaving, minding our own business, when I see a woman run towards me. Run. And I catch my breath, and I say, "Can I help you?" And she says, "I know who you are. I just want to tell you I'm so sorry for us. I am just so moved by your story and all of the things." She's saying the same things you're saying. And then I say, because I've had a flight, then I guess I can count on your vote for Kamala Harris, the gun safety candidate, so that we can avoid future incidents like the one that took my daughter's life. And she looked at me and she said, "I'm shocked. I'm voting for the Christian candidate. And as a Christian, I'm surprised that you..." And I stopped.
Oh, wow.
And I had a flight, and my husband put his hand on my shoulder because he knew I was about to say,
he knows his wife.
Hey, this is the...
Yeah. And I'm sorry that happened to you.
And
Goodness gracious.
It's a big thing, and we haven't talked about Christian nationalism yet.
No, let's go into it, because we're also both people of faith, and one of the things that I don't think a lot of people confronted, and I'm guilty of it as well. I wish I'd spoken about this more pre-election. I personally believe that this administration is one of the greatest threats to the true practice, love, and realization of Jesus in people's lives. That is a strong, you can fight me, cuss me out, be in my DMs about it all day. I think that this administration and the cruelty that they're administering in the policies that they are enacting is the biggest thing to push people away from Christ since the beginning of the Crusades. So knowing that, I feel very strongly about Christian nationalism, because the conflating of politics and faith, it just doesn't make any sense. So tell me about how that fits for you, especially because you've been on the, as a Black woman, I'm on the other side of it all the time, but in a different way, tell me all the things.
I will tell you that there are a lot of people working in this space. As you know, we know these incredible authors, Jamar Tisby,
Brian Recker,
so many people. And there's a book that came out recently that I was fortunate enough to get an early copy of, called In Guns We Trust. And it was written by Bill Cole. And it talks about, did you know white evangelicals in the United States are more likely to own guns than any other group? They are also, by and large, owners of more manufacturing plants of guns than any other group. So Christian nationalism, there are so many ways it impacts us. But the fact that we haven't examined the white evangelical culture that isn't talking about the Jesus of peace, that isn't talking about the Jesus of love, but that is conflating masculinity and power with gun ownership, and not just a firearm to protect your home, but I'm talking about high power weapons of mass destruction.
Not a rifle to hunt here. We're talking about war weapons.
War weapons that are influencing and impacting even police. How many police chiefs have we seen say, we have to have these weapons get off the street? We can't do our work, right?
It's dangerous for the very police that people swear up and down that they, love and require protection. If we want to support them,
we will make it so that they can walk into a home with a domestic violence call and all of our police officers will get home safe.
That's right. That's right.
Because that is the most deadly call.
Absolutely.
Domestic violence,
That's
typically.
Right.
So there are so many ways that Christian nationalism impacts not just white evangelical churches, but our own churches.
Absolutely.
And we are seeing the manifestation of that now with our lack of ability to care for people in meaningful ways, with examples that are going viral, sadly, of our poor treatment of people. And I'm just really sad that these are conversations we're not having. But I'm encouraged by books like In Guns We Trust, because some people are deciding enough's enough.
Absolutely. And I also believe that everybody, this is the power of Christ. If you actually are someone who's a believer, and someone who actively participates, in the faith and, knows the Jesus of the Bible, this brown, humble man who loved everyone, whether you were LGBTQIA or an atheist, that same Jesus, loves us and loves them. And if you really believe in that way, cruelty when you see it. And you
also know hypocrisy. I learned really early. I was being prayed for across the country by people who would never vote to change, to end the injustice, which is, again, if you think about that triangle, grief, trauma, and injustice, why do you feel sorry for me if you don't plan on
doing anything about it? No, I think that sometimes, I'm going to say this transparently, is I think sometimes people feel scared and they're praying for you as if that puts one in the bucket to make sure it doesn't happen to them.
They're praying they never have to meet me.
That's what I'm saying.
They're praying they never have to hold my tears.
They're praying that they never have to be in that situation. That's what I think it is. It's more of a prayer of, that is so sad, that the thoughts and prayers, I'm extending those because that makes me a kind person. And hopefully if that adds to my kind person bucket, I'm a better Christian. And if I'm a better Christian, this would never happen to me. So it's this sort of weird, convoluted, instead of, oh no, if you're a better Christian, you will act differently by being the hands and feet of Jesus and walk into that booth to vote for things that would keep Anna Grace alive. That's what you would do. Action.
Yes.
Action.
Beautifully stated.
Sorry. I'm so sorry.
Beautifully stated.
So I have to ask you, obviously we could actually stay here all day and there's so much that could be said. And while I know that we're, having this conversation and you guys are probably listening to this around the time of the anniversary of Newtown. And I honestly hope I never have to have you back to talk about anything other than something funny, happy, and maybe a celebration of, laws being passed and changes being made.
Or just dinner. Or maybe there's a winery.
Or a winery. Maybe we're getting a flight. We go cuss people out together about their votes. Okay. Maybe that's it. And then we pray about it on Sunday, right?
Yes.
But, I do want to know, just for today though, if there was anything you could ask of everyone that you could say, look, thoughts and prayers, sure, but if you want people to have a better understanding of what your real lived experience is, and obviously you can speak to yourself, but generally the lived experiences of the 26 families, that are living a life that we pray we never, ever have to understand, what would that be?
I have a couple answers.
Yeah, all the things.
And I don't have one.
Yeah,
sorry.
All the things.
One is, whenever there's a tragedy, yes, it could be a collective, it could be mass, but there are individual families, so learn about them. So for example, for Newtown, there's one website, www.mysandyhookfamily.org. All the names are listed in a heart. You can click on them and you can learn about each individual family in their own voice. Not every family is going to have the money or capability to have a media team so they can elevate their thing. They might have these tiny little nonprofits, or they might just want to live anonymously and not be involved in anything. So I think there are two kinds of teams. Well, first of all, visit the website. Secondly, in terms of activism, know what you're good at. If I'm good at letter writing, find a group that needs that. If I'm good at going to the legislative office building and doing pickets or that kind of work, do that. Find and assess the thing you're good at. Maybe I'm good at cooking. You can make casseroles. You can remember the birthday of a child. You can remember the anniversary and ask a family, connect with a group that works with them and say, can I deliver meals? I can do it on the porch. I don't have to come inside, right? There are so many different ways. So I always say activism needs two teams, an action team in terms of policy and legislation, and also a care team. Even if we ended gun violence tomorrow, there are millions of American families living with its impact. And as I already stated to you, that thing doesn't get better over time. So finding a way to care for those families is another one. Another ask I have of listeners is that we really have an honest conversation in the mirror about our anti-Blackness in whatever way that manifests itself. And remember that holding those beliefs is a spectrum, and we all have work to do, myself included. So walk away from shame. Maybe you did vote for Donald Trump. Walk away from shame and get to action. What can you do now? Can you donate to an organization in your community that is led by a Black and brown group or an LGBTQ plus group that needs you now? Turn your shame, your regret into action. That is another thing. The other and last that I will ask your listeners, this is kind of selfish. We remember Anna by committing to supporting families and individual students who are at the Anna Grace Academy and who, for example, the year she should have gone to college, we scholarship 2 kids. My goal for them both is to graduate from school with 0 debt. I want them to be in school with 0 debt so that they can go on and start their lives in a debt-free space. So we do all that work through the Anna Grace Project. So if your listeners want to see what we do and contribute, that always feels kind of a selfish ask, but I would love that. So it's www.annagraceproject.org. So first, look at all the families. Second, know about change requires 2 teams, an action team and a care team. Third, examine anti-Blackness in all the ways. And if you're living in shame, you can be released from that. We just need you to join the team. And number 4, look at the Anna Grace Project.
So intentional, so practical, again, so generous. And I just thank you. I don't know what else to say. I thank you for the grace that you've shown me. I thank you for bringing Anna Grace into this world, and I'm sorry you had to send her on to the next, but I'm thankful for the work you do now in her name and in her honor and the impact that you're making every single day. I know I am forever changed. I will do my very best to make sure that we never forget Anna Grace ever. And that I can do whatever I can do to make sure that this doesn't happen again.
A week and a half before her death, we were snuggling in the morning. And I was a little bit stressed, and she noticed I was distracted. And she looked at me and she said, "What's wrong?" And I said, "Oh, just got working a little bit. And I'm just a little stressed." And she said, "Don't let them suck your fun circuits dry, Mom." And I said, "What?" She said, "Don't let them suck your fun circuits dry, Mom." And I said, "Anna, did you make that up, or did you read that somewhere?" She said, "No, that's mine." So in that spirit, for you and your listeners, as we go forward to engage and encounter this world we have inherited in this moment, we do have to walk with intentionality and, yes, the gravity, but also with that spirit of a 6-year-old who deserves to still be here and does not get the chance. But we can work in that energy and that memory, I think, for the greater good of the people who need us now.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone. The details are below. Go do something.